Why don't we get started? Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out on a Sunday morning. And welcome to today's program, Abandoned in the Desert, the Plight of African Refugee Asylum Seekers in Israel. My name is Stan Shapiro, and I'm a member of Friends of Healing Across the Divide, the Tikkun Olam Committee of Congregation B'nai Israel in Northampton, Mass. And I'm currently co-president of CBI as well. First, please be aware that all are muted and we're recording this program. If you do not want your face to be recorded, please turn off your video. We'll be learning today about the experiences of African refugee asylum seekers and the work of Kuchinate, an arts-based economic and psychosocial collective for African asylum-seeking women. Kuchinate has been a grantee of Healing Across the Divides. There will be a time for Q&A at the end of our program. If you have a question, please put your questions in the chat at any time during the meeting. The chat will be monitored by Dr. Henry Rosenberg, who will lead the Q&A at the end of the meeting. Today's program is co-sponsored also by Healing Across the Divides and the CBI Tikkun Olam Committee. We're pleased that this is the first time that HATD and the Tikkun Olam have officially worked together. As part of a national effort sponsored by HIAS, today's program is the second of two area efforts highlighting the plight of Black refugees and asylum seekers. Some of you may also have attended the recent program on the plight of Haitian migrants, sponsored by Jewish activists for immigration justice. CBI has a history of commitment to assisting refugees, raising funds most recently to support people devastated in the hurricane in Puerto Rico and to support refugees in Ukraine. Also, recently, we sent a letter to our congregation suggesting donations to help earthquake victims in Syria and Turkey. In addition, CBI members have been part of Circles of Care for a Congolese family and a part of the Valley Immigrant and Refugee Action Group. Healing Across the Divides is an NGO working in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories to measurably improve the health of marginalized people via community-based intervention. And now I'd like to introduce my friend, Dr. Norbert Goldfield, the Executive Director of Healing Across the Divides, who will give us an overview of HATD, its work in supporting organizations working with African refugee asylum seekers, and will introduce today's speakers.
Thank you very much. As past president of Healing Across the Divides and the founder and executive director of Healing Across the Divides. Did I say past president of CBI? That's what I meant to say. Past president of CBI and founder and executive director of Healing Across the Divides. It truly is a great pleasure for me to be here today. It's actually quite emotional because we're talking about a program for me that has meaning and personal meaning on a level. So I'd like to start out with that personal meaning to start with. My first time that I was in Israel was in 1967. I usually don't talk about this, but the reality is that my parents were Holocaust survivors. And when I was in Israel in 1967, we met family for the first time who had survived. Fast forward that I always felt compelled to be engaged in the Jewish community. And that's what brought me to CBI. It's such an honor to continue to be part of CBI in so many ways and to be part of the Tikkun Olam Committee. But I also felt morally compelled to be engaged in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Fast forward to 2004, and that started Healing Across the Divides, which, as Stan has mentioned, has an objective to improve the health of marginalized Israelis and Palestinians through community-based interventions. We do it by bring the groups together whenever we can. And it's amazing to meet some of these leaders. These leaders are just amazing of these community groups. One of the leaders you're going to meet today is Didi Khan, and she is from the organization called Kuchinate. But I want to say that before I introduce her, that what compels me to be engaged with the refugee asylum seekers, because at the end of the day, they have very little to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but it has everything to do with my personal background. And I'm not sure if those of you can see this, but this is a photograph of Holocaust survivors in Israel interwoven with African refugee asylum seekers. I always have to step back to just calm myself, whenever I look at that photograph. And so we have funded refugee asylum seekers groups for years. And most recently, Didi Mumin Khan at Kuchinate. And so it's with great pleasure I'm going to introduce her, but I also want to say that she will also be introducing our Israeli representative after that, who is Veronica Vigdorchuk. But now I'd like to hand it over to Didi, and thank you so much. And it's really an honor to be supporting you, to be working with you, and to introduce you. Thank you, Didi.
Oh, thank you so much, Norbert, for that introduction. And it is indeed very moving what you suggested. And I think people will see in the movie, the video, that some of the work that we at Kuchinate have also been doing with Holocaust survivors, underlining our motto, we were all once refugees, and trying to build compassion and empathy for what we do through the arts and through people understanding about common history. I think it would probably be a good idea to maybe start off with the video, which I just want to say can be very disturbing. For some, it's a video that CNN did, part of the Freedom Project, when the asylum seekers were coming through the Sinai back in the years 2008 to 2012. And this was the background of which Kuchinate was built. So I think if we start off with that video and then you see the rest of the video, I can talk about what's not in that afterwards. So thanks very much for starting that.
Sinai, the lawless desert region along Egypt's border with Israel. Would-be African migrants who try to get through Sinai to a better life in Israel are often held captive and abused by Bedouin gangs. Some are murdered, others only released after their families pay thousands of dollars in ransom. Many of the women are raped, and some become pregnant. Tegisti Tekla is one of them. I met her in Tel Aviv. They are cruel people, she says, criminal people, and they don't have the human sense like us. I was screaming, I'm a virgin, but they don't care about you at all. Tegisti is one of the few women willing to talk publicly about her ordeal. Tegisti's rapist made her pregnant, and after she made it to Israel, she had an abortion. I would suffer all my life because I would have had a son or a daughter without a father, she says. That's why I decided not to have the baby. There are hundreds of cases like Tegisti's. Some women who become pregnant from rape give birth while in the captivity of people smugglers. A human rights group provided us with this picture of then 5-month-old Cecilia, born inside a Bedouin torture camp. After she was released, her mother told the organization that the trafficker who fathered Cecilia tortured the child, inflicting burns that reached her skull bone to pressure relatives into paying a ransom. Cecilia's wounds were finally treated in a hospital in Egypt. While in Sinai, I met Sheikh Mohammed Abu Bilal, a powerful tribal leader who has started to fight back against the human traffickers. Mohammed set up a safe house for refugees who flee the torture camps and says he frequently finds women who were raped, became pregnant, and were still tortured by the smugglers. There are usually signs of torture and rape, he says. They arrive in bad condition, dressed in rags and starved. These are all methods of oppression to exploit them for money. I get them doctors, and I try to help. Many African refugees who make it to Israel wind up here in Levinsky Park in Tel Aviv. An aid group helping the migrants says a lot of women request abortions after becoming pregnant in captivity, but very few will talk about it.
Women say that they will not get any support from their community if they are victims of rape. So they will keep completely silent about it so that they're not ostracized, even more so if they're pregnant.
Women like Tegisti Tekla are the exception, coming forward, making their misery public in the hope of saving others from suffering the same fate in the Sinai Desert. Fred Plight, CNN, Tel Aviv.
Okay. This, you can understand, was the background to the beginning of Kuchinate. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees decided that they wanted to give some donations towards starting a pilot project to give mental health assistance to the asylum seekers. I had just arrived back in Israel again after a 17-year break and I was a clinical psychologist with a background in trauma, and I was asked to start giving therapy to these women. This was the job that I did as part of an organization called the African Refugee Development Center. And we very soon, at this time, I met Sister Aziza, who's an Eritrean nun, sister, now spiritual leader of the Eritrean community, who started to interview many of the victims of the Sinai and got information from them about what had happened. And she was the first person that started to tell the world about what had been going on in the Sinai desert. And for this, she won the State Department Award, Heroes of Our Time. She came to America and met Hillary Clinton. She doesn't like me telling that, but she's on mute, so it's okay. Together, Sister Aziza and I thought, how can we help women who are in a state of survival, who it's not in their culture to receive therapy, who don't want to talk about something bad that's happened in their recent past because they don't know what they're going to eat tomorrow. And and therapy is not part of the culture. And we started to think about what we could do that would be income generating, that would give psychosocial support, that would bring women together to support each other, and also help many women together, because even the best pair of psychologists and none in the world aren't going to be able to help as many women as there were, and men actually. And at that time, there were 7,000 victims of torture in Israel. And so with that began Kuchinate. We started off on all kinds of experiments about what we were going to make in order to income generate, and came to making crocheted baskets. It's a long story, but I'm just going to tell you the end of it. And we received funding to start to take recycled fabric and make baskets. And these are the baskets that we started to make. We started off with about 5 women in 2011, and today we are over 300 women who are crocheting and sewing. These are the products that we've been starting to make over time. Carpets, puffs. These are examples of our Shavuot collection, all different kinds, hot pads. We now make purses, we make books out of African fabrics, we make dolls. Here's our new Corona doll collection. And at time of Corona, I will just put in now that you might be wondering what on earth is going on when Corona hit and everyone was at home. Well, we planned for this and sent all of our women home with piles of fabrics for them to make at home. Here's some pictures of some of our women working from home, sewing machines at home, children all around them, but continuing to create, get salaries, get raw materials delivered, get food at home, get food vouchers at home from many volunteers. And here, the last thing you can see is our latest product, which is a pack of 4 masks that we are making from African fabrics. So our Kuchinate became not just Kuchinate, but all kinds of crafts, and became not only the making of crafts, but also, I'm just showing you some pictures in our studio so that you can get a feel of what's going on here. There we go. But also became a place where our women meet Israeli public in a way that they are either selling our goods. Here's people packing Pesach baskets for a company, making coffee ceremonies and advocating for the cause of asylum seekers in Israel. Making traditional Eritrean food and getting people to come and eat and taste the food, and coming to have crochet lessons and learn the craft. So we've been having, up until Corona hit, about 20 groups a month coming into Kuchinate and meeting our women. And that was another arm of our income generation. It wasn't just the making of things, but it was also reaching out into the community. Here's Abrahet with a customer. In addition to that, Sister Aziza and I came sort of full circle and realized that with cultural understanding and with adaptation, we are providing psychosocial support, but in our way. In fact, our whole organization is psychosocial support, but we started to hone in more on what would be needed by the community specifically. So for example, we made adaptations like, we don't give people a specific hour to come and meet us, but we have an open clinic where people can come when they're ready and when they want to see us. Here's another example that you can see on the screen. We wrote
a book together, which was published by the UNHCR, called A Guide to Survivors of Torture, which is in Tigrinya and in English together, like the Bible. And it's very short chapters, which provide some kind of normalization about the symptoms that the woman had been experiencing, and some kind of self-help as what they could do to help themselves, and ideas of organizations that can help as well. We built this with the community. We asked them whether they thought it would be a good idea. We shared the chapters with them. We got feedback. We had translation, back translation, etc. And this is used by all of the organization and groups and individual work. And Aziz and I are now looking towards what we're going to be doing next in terms of the self-help area. I want to share with you our community, which is our studio, which has become a community center. The women call it a home. Women say that it's, we've got a sign in the front, which was a quote from one of our women. I found a place where I can rest my heart. We celebrate together, we mourn together, we have fun together. And you can see this is a picture of Christmas with Sister Aziza in the middle. You can see that perhaps that get a little bit of a feeling from those photographs of what the place is for our women. One of our big projects that we do are art collaborations, and these encompass all of the elements of Cucinate that we are proud of, because they are income generating, they are therapeutic, that the women express themselves through the work that they're doing. It's advocacy, teaching people about what the situation of asylum seekers in Israel. So I'll just very briefly go through. This was with an artist called Gil Yefman, and 4 of our women expressed themselves through these life-size baskets that they made, which became on display at the Feldman Gallery in New York as part of the Women in Genocide exhibition. And if you stand next to all of them, you will hear the voice of our women telling the collective story of the woman. And each story is extremely moving, but obviously I can't go into that right now. And we had it at the Haifa Museum as well, I think I said to you, and we're very proud to have it at the Design Museum of Holon recently as part of their 10th anniversary, which only 20% of Israeli artists were taking part in this, and our baskets were there as well. This is in the Feldman Gallery, and this is Achbaret that you can see, who as a result of the beginning of this basket that she's been making has become actually an artist in her own right. We're extremely proud of her. We're a single mother with 2 children, one with severe difficulties, who was in time out, who makes the most incredible baskets. She had a special collection at the Design Museum in Holon, and this is for an exhibition that's going to be in Sweden in the summer. We do art, advocacy art. This is in South Tel Aviv, where we invite members of South Tel Aviv to come and have coffee with us, learn to crochet round a tree. It was the Festival of Lights, and all these are baskets in the trees with lights, trying to make friends with the South Tel Avivians, Israelis who are not very keen on asylum seekers. We've done many of these in South Tel Aviv. This is a wall in Rothschild Street with Mia Shon, the mosaic artist, which we did. We were all once refugees, a piece of mosaic. And many people have shared, tweeted, Facebook, Instagram, etc. You can see us all working on this together. This was part of the illustration week in Tel Aviv, illustrating the women, illustrating their lives through mobiles. This is a picture of Haywan, who was a midwife in Eritrea, and showing about what her life was like as a midwife in Eritrea. We sat at the Tel Aviv Museum for 2 weeks and invited members of the public to come and crochet the living fence with us. Here is people crocheting, and I'm going to tell you right now what that living fence is. The living fence was, this is all crocheted leaves, and this was reference to the path to the extermination camps at Auschwitz, had a sort of rule that came down from the Third Reich, that there had to be a lot of foliage so people wouldn't see where they were going, and so that it would look pleasant on the way, and it would hide what was to come. And this referenced that. And what we did through the Tel Aviv Museum of Art exhibition was we got our women to connect with Israelis and to work together with them to create this. That there were over 200 people's names on the fence at this exhibition, and was extremely moving experience. At the end of this, and we did many artist talks where our women spoke to members of the public. At the end of this, a gallery in Austria bought the entire work of Gil's whole exhibition, which was called Kibbutz Buchenwald, which was a very moving exhibition. But this had already been acquired. And so we had to make another one. And for that, we went to, this is a picture of the whole work. We went to the Holocaust survivors charity called Amcha in Tel Aviv. And with Holocaust survivors, we made another one of these living fences. And I want to tell you, I went there a few times to visit the women working with these Holocaust survivors, and the laughter and the sort of camaraderie and the stories that they shared and the tears. And at the end of it, some of the women dedicated some of their lives to people that had died in the Holocaust. And it just underlines our whole sort of idea that we were all once refugees. We're trying to reach out with empathy to get the Israeli public to be empathic, to have compassion, and to understand that we are all the same at the end of the day. And maybe through this way, which is such a sort of emotive subject, as we all know, for Israelis, it is some way that people have an in. And I can say that we've had a lot of compassion and empathy along this subject and for our women through these exhibitions. We did a pop-up exhibition which was also showing, we had a photographer who photographed all of our women together, putting photographs from the Holocaust together from Sandra Weil, who was a creator in Sweden. These are Swedish photographs of refugees during the Holocaust in Sweden, and we put the photographs together. And that was called We Were All Once Refugees. So there's us at our wall, and our women say thank you and thank you for inviting us. And that is our story in short. Aktsea Mazleg, how you say in Hebrew.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for watching that and for listening and for allowing me to give a voice to our 350 plus women at Cucinate and Sister Aziza and all of the women. Thank you all for coming on the Sunday morning of yours to listen and to hear about our work, especially at this extremely difficult time in the history of Israel, where we really do feel very frightened, I have to admit, and alone. And if I just hone in on the issue of asylum seekers, it's especially true. And I think Veronica's going to say something about this after me, but to say that if what we fear most goes ahead in terms of the government changes, then, you know, our women are going to be in for a very, very difficult ride, with the ultimate being deportation, which will be against the 1951 Refugee Convention, against international law. But I've got no doubt that having heard everything that I've heard up to now, since the last 2 months of this new government, it is not such a faraway nightmare. I want to just go back to sort of maybe just finish off sort of a few things that maybe you didn't hear about in this short presentation before, is just to say that we continue to develop. We have a very big now education part is what we do, which is personal and professional education. Our women are learning computers, English, Hebrew, storytelling techniques, because they speak a lot to groups, political storytelling, and everyone is having their own sort of private programs as to what they need in order to develop. And we want these skills to be capacity building and sustainable and be able to be transferable to other contexts if necessary. We have 10 women who are actually managers at Cucinate, who are asylum seekers, who are outstanding. I'm so incredibly proud of them and their resilience and their ability to sort of take on challenges and just really go for them. So, for example, Shawit, one of our women who's an Eritrean asylum seeker who was went through horrific experiences herself, she learned how to do computers. She did 36 lessons. She's a good craftswoman, and she now is in charge of our inventory and production, which is very, very computer-based. I can say that she is our expert. She's better than all of us at what she's doing. She has her own office, and people really do come in all the time asking her to help, for advice, and for her to do things. And this just gives me, it's incredibly moving to me. It gives me incredible pride. One of our women who went to Canada and who was in a terrible situation when she first came to Cucinate, and then she learned to crochet. We slowly realized she had a lot of leadership potential, and eventually she became a manager. Then she became the sewing manager. She was the one who made all of the masks during Corona. She came to me one day during Corona with 80 masks and said, I said, what is this? She said, I've received so much, I want to give back. She was eventually one of the lucky ones to be resettled through the United Nations High Commission for Refugee Resettlement Program, where they only resettled 200 from Israel because we're meant to be a first world country, and that's usually they help third world countries to resettle. And she was lucky enough to go to Canada with her 2 little girls, and she started Cucinate Canada, which is very moving to me. And many, many more stories like this, perhaps the last one right now, where we are now heading towards 2 very big exhibitions in Israel, one of them being the Biennale, which they took over, out of 2,500 applicants, they took 30 people to show, and one of them is Lena Jokalon, who's one of our managers. She's a studio manager in charge of design, and just outstanding work that is showing her life in Sudan and showing that she's more than a woman who's traumatized. She's more than being an asylum seeker. She's a human being with a story of which people stand and listen to her when she's showing her beautiful works, showing her village in Sudan, or she makes applique on big, huge cloths where she's showing the tree that they used to sit around and gossip and cut vegetables and wash clothes. And it's extremely moving to see people who maybe will see asylum seekers as transparent, walking along in the sort of, in the mall, or someone sort of cleaning the bathroom, ignoring them, not even noticing they exist. And there they are on their, piling up to listen, and not only to listen, to also buy the works of which we have. It's an ongoing project. It's like one of our baskets all the time. We're trying to improve, to get stronger. Our biggest problem really is just trying to be able to sustain ourselves all the time through thinking of new ideas to income generate, and to be able to fundraise at a time where it's so difficult, with worldwide recessions and people having their own problems everywhere, and a lot of people not having sympathy for asylum seekers, a lot of Jewish people not having sympathy for asylum seekers at all. And if they give funds to Israel, they want it to go towards Jews and not other things. And so it's a difficult climate, but let's all hope for the best. And with good people like you, I want to say that we would not be anywhere we were without the good people we met along the way. One of them was obviously Norbert, and the rest of the team, and all of the donors who've helped us, and other donors, and good people like you who've taken your Sunday morning to sit and just listen to the story. And if you, in the very least, could just, do a like on Facebook, Instagram, link, whatever media you have, and just share it and tell people, because they can link onto we've got a beautiful website, cucinate.com, where people can buy goods, can donate, can just share the story with others. So thank you so much. International Women's Day coming up on March the 8th. And I think that this is a relevant conversation to be having at this time. So thank you so much. I hope I didn't speak over the time. And I think that questions are at the end. And so is that right? I'm going to introduce Veronica next. Would I be right to say? So I will, without further ado, introduce Veronica Vigdorchik, who is the representative of Healing Across the Divides in Israel. And I'll hand over to you, Veronica, to talk about what you're going to explain what you're going to talk about.
Thank you, Didi. I must say that I'm very emotional now. My heart is racing. And hello, everyone. It is very nice to meet you all, and I'm really excited to be here. I will provide a brief historical and political background to Didi's important conversation about the African refugee asylum seekers. In 1951, Israel signs the convention relating to the status of refugee of the UN, only a few years after Israel was established. Israel pushed for this convention because of the Jewish history of displacement and a history of being refugees during much of Jewish history. The arrival of non-Jewish African asylum seekers to Israel began in the mid-90s, but the majority arrived between 2007 and 2012. By March 2018, there are around 65,000 people in Israel. This is according to the data of population and immigration authorities at the end of 2019. 71% are from Eritrea and 20% are from Sudan. The Israel government doesn't recognize the asylum seekers, the refugee asylum seekers as asylum seekers. The Israel government sees them as infiltrators and doesn't provide them with any legal status or any rights. When they arrived into Israel, they were picked up by the army at the Egyptian border and held in military bases. They were then dropped off at Tel Aviv Central Bus Station without any help or guidance. Most of them stayed in Tel Aviv and in the area that's surrounding the central bus station. This is a very low social economic area with a lot of people that have drug issues and a lot of social economic situations. Using this approach, Israeli intentionally avoids giving refugee status as African asylum refugees. To avoid more African asylum seekers coming in, Israel builds a wall around 2012 at the Israeli-Egyptian border. The government passed amendments to laws that prohibits infiltration, crimes as a sentencing, and built Cholot Detention Center in 2014, about 2 kilometers from the Egyptian border. This is one of the most difficult periods because they were catching the asylum seekers at the streets and taking them to the detention center without any criminal or any legal procedure. They will just come and arrest them and put them in Cholot Center. They will not be allowed to exit there without permission. So this is what was horrific. A human rights organization petitioned to Supreme Court claiming that the establishment of Cholot prison represent a human rights violation. In September 2014, a Supreme Court of Israel declared the facility should be closed on the ground that Cholot prison is a human rights violation. In addition, right-wing groups and conservative political parties lobbied against the refugees. Even a member of parliament on one famous speech said that the asylum seekers are cancer in the nation. Those groups are now in the government. Some of them that were groups, civilian groups, are now sitting in the coalition. The result, the government together with individual civilians and political movements committed many acts of violence against the asylum seekers. This atmosphere is the same and even worse today, according to the new government. Today, about 35 asylum seekers that remain in Israel, most of them are from Eritrea and Sudan, and 35 Ukrainian citizens that have arrived when the war in Ukraine began. Israel immediately welcomed non-Jewish Ukrainians and gave them refugee status, accommodated them by resources for those who fled Ukraine. What does it all mean? You need to have the right skin color to be obliged to be a refugee in Israel. As Norbert stated in introduction of Healing Across the Divides, is committed to supporting at least one community group working with refugee asylum seekers at all times. We are proud to work with Cucinate. Thank you all.
Hi, everybody, and thank you all for coming this morning. My name is Sarah Weinberger, and I'm a member of Friends of Healing Across the Divides and the CBI Tikkun Olam Committee. In just a few minutes, we're going to begin our Q&A, so please don't forget to put your questions in the chat. You've heard about the programs Healing Across the Divides funds to support grassroots organizations serving African asylum seekers in Israel. I'm asking you today to become a checkbook or a credit card activist by making a donation to Healing Across the Divides that will be targeted only to these programs. Please consider giving an amount that you feel good about to enable the continuation of these critical programs. Secondly, take a shopping trip on the Cucinata website, which is also posted, where you will see an amazing variety of brilliantly colored items that will grace your home or make meaningful gifts, many like the ones you saw in the video. Cucinata is a not-for-profit organization with funds from purchases enabling hundreds of vulnerable women to rebuild their lives and build resilience and economic independence. What a great opportunity to purchase something created by the extraordinary women of Cucinata. And Cucinata means crochet. The last action we are asking people to consider is to help African asylum seekers who desire to find refuge outside of Israel, perhaps in the United States. Dr. Norbert Goldfield is investigating opportunities for private sponsorship of African asylum seekers through President Biden's Welcome Corps program. To stay updated on his efforts, as well as other news about African asylum seekers, email Dr. Goldfield, and the email is also posted. So the links to help are posted here as well as in the chat, and will be sent to you in a follow-up letter too. I thank you in advance for making the choice to take an action to support the lives of the people whose plight you have learned about and borne witness to today. Thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Henry Rosenberg.
Good morning and good evening, depending on where you are. We have lots of questions, and I fear we may not be able to get to all of them, but let's start and try. How does Cucinata address linguistic and cultural differences?
Didi's internet just dropped, so she's trying to reconnect. Okay, so I'm sorry she is not able to answer it now.
Okay, let's try another question. There are a few that are related. I'll try to lump them up. The person who asks the question assumes that as non-Jews, these women are not eligible for Israeli citizenship, but
yes.
Have any of them at all been allowed to settle legally? And will they then be required to serve in the Israeli army?
So most of them, they're actually, even if they petition a request for some kind of legal status, you will see that they will maybe apply or answer to 3 or 4 a year. I'm talking about single numbers. It's a policy. They don't want to give them any refugee status or any status. Their policy, the government policy, is to try that all the African asylum seekers will go back or go to another country. So there are in a single numbers that asylum seekers received any status. And maybe if you, I saw that Didi came back, and maybe she can elaborate on that more.
Okay.
If you maybe can repeat.
Well, let me go back to the first question for Didi. Can you hear me? So how does Cucinata address linguistic and cultural differences?
You're muted, Didi.
No?
There we go. Okay, I'm sorry about that. My internet went down. I'm on my phone, so which seems to be better. Can you all hear me properly? Okay, so how do we address linguistic and cultural differences is the question. So, well, first of all, let's start off that my co-director is an Eritrean nun who speaks Tigrinya, Amharic. Tigrinya is the language of people from Eritrea, Amharic, Ethiopia. She speaks Arabic, English, and Italian, not Hebrew, but she understands it. And so from the beginning, we have had a, you know, way of seeing people together. When we started off, we used to do everything together, and we used to call it bicultural therapy. In addition, right now, if you're looking at it, we have more than 10 women who are asylum seekers who manage Cucinate. It means that the whole of Cucinate, if any of you have visited, will know that it is a place where women come and they feel at home, they feel it's their home and their family. There is culturally, you know, cultural music playing, the food, the way it looks, the way people are, everything that we do is for the woman and by the woman and created by the woman. And so in that way, we do, you know, it's a lot of years now that people have been in Israel, so the language is better. I've learned Tigrinya, although it's terrible, but I try really hard, and I think I probably understand more than I can say. And we do have Tigrinya lessons for our staff. We also have English and Hebrew lessons, as said, and we try our best to, you know, respect all sort of cultural and religious differences. If Sister Aziza was here, she would be saying Cucinate is a synagogue, it's a church, and it's a mosque. Everyone is welcome, and everyone, you know, gets on very well at Cucinate, including, you know, we just had, you know, including the Ethiopians and the Eritreans, and even though there was just recently a lot of pressure, sort of political pressure. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. This should be a simple question. I hope that the guidebook for survival, is that book available? Is that book?
Yes, it is. It's available. Yeah. If anyone wants, I can send. We do have some hard copies. If you're in Israel, we can send to you, or I can send you a PDF if you just email me and ask for it with pleasure.
Okay. And is there, you may have said this, I'm not sure if I missed it. Are there people arriving, coming through the Sinai now?
No. Well, no. Since 2012, anti-infiltration laws stopped people coming in by building up a wall that people couldn't come through. And I think word was getting through to the fact that people, you know, there were such horrendous journeys with money extorted, and also coming through was impossible. And if you were going to get through, you was immediately thrown into prison. And so that all stopped. Actually, right now, there's a phenomenon of some Tigray young girl refugees, actually trafficked girls coming in through from Ethiopia. And I don't know a lot about the journey because I've just actually been made aware of it really now this week. We're starting to think about how we can help. And so there are some sort of people coming from Ethiopia, women, but other than that, people have been here for a long time. And the calling card is no longer about trafficking, someone's been trafficked or tortured, although that's all often in the background, and even now people will talk about it, but it's very often now it's about life. It's about cancer, diabetes, disabilities, children with disabilities. It's about the life that you live after all of these years in Israel. It's the normal problems that people have, but without having healthcare, social services, you know, basic human rights which are afforded to you.
Another question, are the children in school?
Yes, there's a law of compulsory education in Israel. Everyone goes to school. If you have a child with special needs, then it really is, you know, very, the schooling is good in my opinion, and people say that who have left, but there is segregation in education, which is a huge but. And, you know, in recent years, it's become worse. And so there are schools for asylum seekers in Tel Aviv, which are not of the level of other schools, and are very distressing just in the fact that there's segregation. And then on top of that, the level and the infrastructure is quite a lot poorer than neighboring schools.
Okay, a few related questions. Are there asylum seekers in Israel from places other than Eritrea, Sudan, and Ukraine? And are there people who come in by other routes, such as, you know, arriving with proper papers, but then overstaying their visa, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the majority are the people that get group protection in Israel, meaning that you don't have to show your individual claim as
you know, to stay there are Eritrean and Sudanese. South Sudanese are in Israel as well. There are people from there's Ethiopians, are people from other countries, such as we have Nigerians, we have people from Ivory Coast, there's people from, there are people from other African countries, but the vast majority are from Eritrea.
Mm-hmm.
And there are majority of people that came in illegally, and now yes, there are, like the stories. What you're saying is people coming on pilgrimages and then staying. There are those stories, but they're really not the majority. Far from, vast minority.
A question: how many asylum seekers from Africa are there in Israel, and how are they housed?
So there's approximately 30,000, probably a bit less now. The number keeps on going down. And people rent houses from slum landlords in South Tel Aviv who take a huge amount of money from people. Used to. Now, I don't know if people have seen, but Tel Aviv was voted as the most expensive city in the world, and according to some poll this year, and it doesn't surprise me because everything's astronomical and housing is expensive for everyone. For asylum seekers, for really, really terrible place you can pay a fortune for, like a room that's bathroom sort of dirty and broken, or cupboards kind of like falling off that the landlord won't fix. But people are moving out of Tel Aviv quite a little bit, trying to find some kind of way of being able to afford life better on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. But it's a problem because all of the refugee organizations are in Tel Aviv. But, you know, with the years, people are becoming more independent and able to care for themselves despite everything. But I can say that 99% of asylum seekers, if not 100%, want to get out of Israel to go to a place where they can get refugee status, because you can't get refugee status in Israel, and get their citizenship, especially for their children, because we've got a growing amount of children who have no hope for the future. They finish school, they might have done well at school, they might have been happy at school, they might have friends, they might have gone to Scouts. But they come out of school, and what awaits for them is maybe like packing supermarkets shelves, because the university, on the whole, they take fees for foreigners of asylum seekers. There are some amazingly philanthropic and wonderful people who do pay these fees. Some of you might have heard of some of them. One of them is Joey Lowe, who really is an angel. But on the whole, this is the situation. Obviously, they don't go to the army, and some of them would like to, because it make them feel like they're more Israeli, or do pre-army programs, but there's none of that for these kids. So the parents would love to get out and be resettled. Now, America, we understand, is starting a similar program to Canada of a private resettlement program where people will need to be sponsored by a group of 5. And if that really does come to be, which we're hearing strong rumors about, it will be the most fantastic news, because it will mean that people will be able to sponsor asylum seekers to come to Israel, to come out of Israel to the States. And this will be the beginning of a new world for them. And so I will definitely tell, you know, the Norbert to maybe sort of, and Healing Across the Divide, to maybe disseminate this information if it comes to be, because there might be some people in your audience from your communities or your synagogues who might be interested in helping with this, because the Canadians have been unbelievable.
Okay, if you could tell us a little more about employment opportunities. There's several questions about you mentioned stocking shelves in stores, about what kind of work people can do, and someone talks about a population and authority office in Bnei Brak where people have to go to get their permission restored, and how some people go there and it's not restored, and what's that all about?
Yeah, so this is the sort of like policy of the government, which has always been, it's not particularly now, it's just going to probably, hopefully not, but get worse, but is about, first of all, having to renew your visa. It used to be every 2 months, every 6 months. You have to go there in person. You have to stand there in the heat or the rain with few facilities waiting to renew your visa. And then you'll get sent away and have to come back the next day and wait to have your visa renewed, and then come back and go through this whole charade again 6 months later, when actually it would be better to just do it online and have some kind of automatic system if you're going to do that. These visas give you, you know, it's called conditional release from prison, actually, and it's not a work permit. It says on it, this is not a work permit, but everyone knows that asylum seekers work. Not only they get paid, they get salary slips, and the government takes high taxes. So it's a strange situation, but the gray area continues whereby the government doesn't make a decision. Employment opportunities for asylum seekers are the usual ones of working in the service industry, such as in hotels or restaurants, etc., cleaning and stuff. But I have to say, with time, there's people that have taken on jobs that have got jobs that are sort of with more responsibility and with more pay. But on the whole, it's not that difficult to get one of those sort of jobs, but they are it's menial labor. There isn't sort of a way of developing yourself professionally. And as far as Kuchinate goes, we're helping the most vulnerable of the asylum seeking community. It's women who have been traumatized, who have got physical problems themselves, often them or their children. And so these are people that are not suitable to be working in asylum seeking jobs because, for example, you've got someone who's had a liver transplant, you can't smell that stuff. We've got people that have got illnesses, that are physically have got problems, they can't do the cleaning jobs and that. And those that can do and like to try and work part-time at Kuchinate to supplement their pay, because everyone is still 14 years on in a state of survival, trying to understand how they can exist, where are they going next, and how they can find a hope for themselves and their children. And we try and do that. And I think through the artwork that we do and through, I can just say about the women at Kuchinate, I think they begin to dare to dream and think that maybe they can do more than what they thought that they can, that there is some hope. I think, for example, the woman I was telling you about who's in charge of our inventory, I said to her one day, recently, I said, what would you like to study? What would you like to do if you weren't here, if you go to another country? And she said that she would like to be a soil engineer. Now, I don't think she would have said that 3 years ago. I think now she's in charge of a whole department. She has done, exceeded herself. She's done exceptionally well in her work. She's very bright. We've recognized that and given her a job that's something way, towards what she can do. And I think she thinks if she can do that, she can go on and become a soil engineer as well one day. But in Israel, that will never happen.
Thank you. So, I'm sorry.
I don't think, unfortunately.
Okay, so I have one more thing, and I know Norbert, you want to say something also, but you want to go now, or should I? There's one. I'm afraid there's going to be time for just one more question, and that has to do with the decision by the lower court in Lod involving taking away people's permission to work. I don't know anything about that issue.
That's not final. That's not final yet.
But I can just speak to that and say that at the moment that's not happening in terms of formal policy. But I can tell you that informally, there are people who are not having their work permits renewed, and they are not getting an explanation for that. There are no work permits, by the way. What we mean is having their visa renewed. So, for example, one of our managers has not had her visa renewed. She's not from Eritrea. She's from South Sudan, and there's other South Sudanese that have not. And so we are trying to appeal this and help her, but there's no formal policy, for example, that South Sudanese will not have their visas renewed, but de facto that's what's happening.
Thank you.
So very briefly, again, I want to thank everybody for being on, but most importantly, want to highlight that Healing Across the Divides has worked with UNHCR. We have co-funded several grantees. We've provided engagement with several grantees, and we're hoping to possibly do it again. So I just want to say that we are engaged with UNHCR. We have funded some amazing programs. You've heard about one of them, but we've funded other amazing programs. And I just want to, for my part, again, thank Didi, and I'll hand it back to Henry.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for the questions, and including the questions we didn't get to. I apologize for that. I want to thank the speakers and the participants, and of course, all the Healing Across the Divides people who are doing this vital work. The work continues. And please see the chat for information about how to support the work financially, how to make some purchases from Kuchinate, And if you're interested in the possibility of private sponsorship, at the time when we hope some of these people can come to the US, contact Norbert for that. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say if there were any questions that we didn't have time to answer, you're very welcome to just email me and I'll answer you by email. And thank you for having me speak on behalf of
You might
all the
want to put your email in the chat.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, so much. We can't tell you how much we appreciate it.
Thank you all. Purim Sameach.
Okay. Mm.